If we don't focus on building a solid foundation of our health, we are going to have short-term results. We're going to feel frustrated and we're going to burn out, feeling like we always have to keep getting started again. So last week I shared my health and wellness journey, more so in how I really used to look at nutrition and how I used to look at exercise, so that you know where I'm coming from and to know that I am someone just like you. I have not always been interested in exercise. I have not always been interested in nutrition. It actually was a byproduct of feeling crappy and learning how to not feel crappy anymore. And that's really where I'm coming from. So today I'm going to be sharing about the 4 pillars of health. And if you've listened to some of my earlier podcast episodes in the past, I really focused on simply behavior modification. And I have learned so much since then. I know, and I've always known mindset is such an important piece of why we do what we do. How do we actually effectively have change in our life to go in the direction that we want to go? But what I've learned is that the stories that we tell ourselves is so much more important and carries more weight than just trying to change our behaviors. Because if we don't focus on changing the stories that we're telling ourselves, then any behavior modifications that we make are going to be short-lived, because eventually, and if you've ever started a new workout program, or you've ever started eating differently, maybe you've started meal prepping. Usually the first week you jump in, you're super excited, right? Like you're doing the things. The second week, you're still figuring out, but you still got some of that lingering excitement. But by week 3, you're like, I'm not seeing results. I am not really feeling much of a difference yet. Like, why keep going, right? Because when we're focused on the results only, it's really easy to burn out and just lose the motivation to keep going. So if we're only focusing on those behavior modifications and we're not actually asking ourselves who, not how, who is it that we're becoming through the process of doing these behavior things? If we don't change the stories that we're telling ourselves about ourselves, then we're going to continue to get stuck in this cycle of starting something new, burning out, stopping, feeling like a failure, feeling like we have to start again. And so I've shifted these 4 pillars of health to embody that. And so the first one, I'll just give you an overview. The first one is mindset. The second one is the physical pillar of health. The third is the nutritional pillar of health. And the fourth is our environment, like the world that we live in. And so those are the 4. So mindset, physical, nutritional, environmental. So with the first one of mindset, I've already started to dive into this, but it's really about the stories we tell ourselves. And these can come from something that someone else has said to us that we've just taken as truth into how we show up, how we live our lives, how we make the decisions that we make. If you're in an interview and you are making yourself really small because you have embodied the story that you shouldn't take up space, you need to be this humble version of yourself, you can't act too overly confident because that might be prideful, those kinds of things, you're going to have a completely different interview versus somebody who is standing in the confidence of who they are, not perfect, but owning who they are, taking up the space that they've been given and confidently carrying themselves because they know who they are. They are a child of God. They have a calling and a purpose. They are following that in their life and pursuing that. Like, it's going to be totally different, right? And so, we have to focus on the who of, who am I becoming? Not necessarily who am I now, but, who is it that I want to become? And then we can follow with, well, what are the things that person does? So it's easier to say, I am somebody who exercises because I love the way that it makes me feel after than saying I have to exercise, right? Like those have 2 completely different feels. And so the actual physical thing of exercising every day is really good for us, but if we are constantly telling ourselves that I can't lose weight, I'll never have the results that I want, I'll never look the way that I want, that might be because you have an ideal that is not realistic for you and you have falsely grasped hold of. It's not helpful for you. But if we aren't focusing on the who's that we're becoming and then letting the hows follow as we see fit, we're going to really struggle to have consistent action in our life and consistently show up in the way that we want. So if you focus only on behavior modification and you don't address who it is that you're becoming, and then the hows that follow, you're going to consistently run into this wall of stopping and starting over again because you haven't addressed your own limiting stories that you've been telling yourself. I just listened to a training by Craig Rochelle on this, and it was really amazing. It's through a private course that he's offering. If you were to pre-order his new book, which I can't remember what it's called at this moment, so I will try to link that in the comments. If that's still being offered, I don't even know if it's being offered anymore at this point. I had a friend share it with me, but it was amazing because in the world of coaching is not about telling someone what to do. That is teaching. Coaching is completely different. Coaching is facilitating deeper questions to a person so that they can come up with the answers on their own. Coaching is more of a guide and a facilitator than it is actually telling someone what to do. And so in these trainings that he had, he was talking to two different people, and it was amazing I wasn't watching the videos, I was listening, but I could hear the change in the way that they were talking about themselves and carrying themselves and the confidence that they were emitting as he walked them through these deeper questions of, them getting to the answers of the who, and then having them establish the how that follows. And this is true for us. If we are telling ourselves that, we are never going to be healthy, our current health is a result of genetics that we can't change. If we're telling ourselves that, I'm a woman getting older, so it's hard for me to lose weight. If we're telling ourselves that, we have kids at home, it's too hard for us to find time to exercise or a place to exercise or what have you. Those are the stories that we're telling ourselves, and those are going to impact our actions and decisions every single day. And so we have to start with mindset when it comes to building a solid foundation of health. We have to address the stories that we're telling ourselves. You can go back to previous episodes about mindset and the art of the practice, the skill of the reframe. That can be a great place to start because if you don't start there, you're going to be frustrated and keep starting over and feeling like, well, nothing works for me, right? Actually, I think truly, if we can be consistent at something and we can keep it as a sustainable lifestyle, anything can be consistent. And I think that does look differently on a whole for everyone, right? Because we all have different things in our life. We all have different priorities. We don't have the same taste. So why would we expect to eat exactly like someone else when we have different things in our life that we enjoy, right? Like my husband and I have very different tastes when it comes to food. He likes bland, I do not. I like all the flavor. I like all the spice. I like to enjoy my food and really experience the fullness of that. And my kids are here in the background, so I'm gonna blur out my background so you can't see my naked kids running around. Mom life, right? I could tell myself that I have kids at home and I can't do something like this, or I can tell myself that I am doing something like this because I enjoy doing this and I can figure it out. I'm someone who's resourceful and I can figure it out, right? Sometimes we have interruptions. Sometimes we have to pause. Sometimes we have to start over. It is what it is, right? Okay. So that is the first one, mindset. The second one is physical. So when it comes to physical, these are our things like exercise, sleep, getting outside in the sun, getting our feet in the grass for some grounding exercises, different things like that. this is more of the how. There are basic foundations of the how that are the same for everybody, right? Like women need 7 to 9 hours of sleep. We use the front of our brains more than men do. We need more sleep than men in order for our brains to go through that process of just rest and recovery at night, right? As for exercise, as women, we start to lose 3 to 8% of our lean muscle mass every decade after our early, even sometime as early as in our like mid 20s to 30s. But that's important to know, right? Like men don't necessarily have that same struggle that we as women have. We also have hormonal cycles that fluctuate all throughout the month. And so in order to, build this baseline of our physical pillar of health, we need to have an understanding of our body and how it works and how it's different from men's, how we are more prone to bone density issues as we age, but also knowing that prioritizing plenty of protein and engaging in weight-bearing exercise are two extremely important, but also extremely proven solutions that help us to increase our bone density and also help us to create an environment in our body that naturally burns more fat, helps us to maintain stable blood sugar levels, and helps us overall just to feel healthier as we age. The more lean muscle mass that we have as women, the better. And we don't have to worry about bulking up because we don't have the testosterone in our bodies that men do. So we don't have to worry about lifting heavy. We should be more concerned about slowing down and having good form and challenging our muscles as much as we can, but then following it up with good rest and recovery so that our muscles have the time and also the resources, protein, to rebuild and repair themselves, to be stronger afterwards. Because the whole process of exercise is literally the tearing of our muscles, and we get stronger through the process of those muscles being repaired, and they're repaired stronger. So prioritizing things like exercise, prioritizing things like sleep, and also keeping it in sync with our hormonal cycles is really important. We have estrogen and progesterone that rise and fall during like the month. And this is something that I am going to be bringing more podcast episodes going forward in the future, but this is a topic I'm still learning and leaning into. If you don't know, we are going to be surrogates for a dear couple that we now get to call friends. And I've never paid as much attention to my cycles as I have since December. Like, it's crazy. And so I'm learning so much more and linking how like different activities that we're engaged in during the month, different types of physical exercise, different things like that, how when we pair those with understanding our cycles, we can get better results because we're working with our bodies and not against our bodies. So prioritizing sleep and exercise, especially as women, is super important as we age. So then the next one is the pillar of nutritional health. And so we have the grand scale and we have the micro scale. So when I'm talking about the micro scale, I'm starting with that because the micronutrients we have in our body are very, very important. And as women, if you've had children in the last 10 years and you've breastfed, you've given of your body to sustain life in any capacity, you are probably depleted in essential nutrients. That's how it goes. When we have babies growing in our bodies, we give them everything that they need in order to grow and thrive. And that has to come from us. And if we're not replenishing those nutrients, we are going to be left depleted. Baby's going to take what baby needs. And that's why it's not just important enough to eat for our baby. We need to be eating for ourselves as well. And I'm not saying eating for two in the traditional sense of just eat more, which you do need to eat more, but it's not like most. Okay, go watch that show. Okay, go watch it. Good job, buddy. Go watch it. And so okay, go watch it, buddy. Go watch it. So again, is that a distraction, an interruption, or is that an opportunity to show love to our children and to give them some attention, even though It's out of turn. That's okay. So nutritional. So as women, replenishing these micronutrients that we need, because I always like to explain it as, if you're baking a cake and you go to your pantry and you're missing key ingredients like flour, butter, sugar, your body can make substitutions, and just like you can make substitutions in a cake, but it's never the same amazing cake that it could be if you had all those optimal nutrients. And our bodies get to a point where they have tried to, pull resources from other places and figure it out. And then they just can't anymore. So traditionally, when we're, just drinking caffeine all the time, we think that it's giving us natural energy. But really what it's doing is it's depleting our B vitamin storehouses in our body and leaving us worse off than before doing that. And if we continue doing it, it's going to throw our hormones out of whack, and it's not going to be good. One bonus tip that I have recently implemented that has been a game changer for me is not drinking coffee first thing in the morning. Now, when my dietitian friend recommended this to me, I was like, what? Like, that's what I do. I wake up in the morning and I have my coffee. Like, it's my breath of fresh air. It's my morning hug. I love it, right? Like, what do you mean I shouldn't have my coffee first thing in the morning? And so she explained it to me that, as women, especially when we wake up in the morning, our cortisol levels are naturally higher. And when we have caffeine right away, we elevate those cortisol levels for longer. And so what we really want to do is we want to start our morning off with a high protein, fiber rich breakfast, and then save that coffee until a little bit later, mid-morning. A lot of times I like to drink it. Like I have mine now. It's more mid-morning. I've already had my breakfast this morning. And I like to do that like before my workout to kind of give me that extra little bit of energy, but it's not necessary anymore. It's not my morning necessary thing. And I feel so much better. I feel more balanced, especially if you are prone to anxiety. Leave the coffee for later. Don't make that your morning thing. It's going to not be good in the long run. I promise you. I know it's hard, but it is worth it. I actually gave it up by doing the cleanse, because naturally during the cleanse, you don't have caffeine. You cut it in half at first. And then by the end of the week, you don't have any more caffeine. And so that really worked for me. So that's the micronutrients. We need to make sure that we are replenishing those nutrients to optimal levels, not just the basic baseline recommended amounts so that we don't get sick or that we avoid illness. Did you know that the recommended daily amounts are so you don't get sick, or so you, avoid illness? Like, that's not what we want. We want optimal levels, right? Like vitamin D levels. This is interesting. So with the whole surrogacy journey, I have had my blood tested very frequently and consistently. And I actually found out my vitamin D levels were extremely low. It was like 27, which the highest range optimal is like 60 to 90. So I was extremely low. And I think that this is because we had just recently dealt with sickness in our house. And so I think it was depleted from that. But I also hadn't been taking extra every day. And I should have been, especially as a woman who has had 5 children and who lives in a more northern climate. So I've been working on that. It'll be interesting. I have blood work coming up this next Monday. So it will have been about a month of me taking extra every day. So I will be interested to see how much those levels have gone up, because I want to get to those optimal levels so that I'm functioning optimally, that my body has everything it needs so that it can do what it needs to do and to do it well, right? So that it's not fighting against itself or trying to figure out, pulling resources from something else. And so taking a good quality supplement is key, and not all supplements are created equal. You'll hear me talk about this all the time. This is something I didn't know. I thought that going to a store and buying an organic supplement with a USP seal or whatever would be great, but I took those for years and never felt a difference, and actually felt exhausted. And it wasn't until I switched brands that I started to feel that difference in just my everyday energy levels. That took me from exhausted to not needing a nap every day, which has been amazing. And I've been able to continue that sustainably for over 9 years now, maybe almost 10. So that's such a simple thing that we can do, and it's necessary. We live in a world today where our food is grown for mass amounts and not necessarily nutritional values. It's picked early, it's transported long distances, it sits on shelves in stores, then we bring it home, we prepare it, which depletes some of the nutrients anyways. Sometimes it sits in our fridge for a while before we actually use it and prepare it. All of these things deplete the nutrients. An apple today compared to 40 or 50 years ago is not the same nutritional content as it once was. It is essential for us to be supplementing. I don't care how perfectly you eat. I have a dear friend who is amazing, who ate, I would say perfectly, like more perfectly than most people. Like she was sprouting her own grains. She was buying from the farmer's market. She was working with local farmers. She was eating a variety every day, like all the things. And she was still depleted in essential nutrients. Plus, it was stressing her out because she felt like she had to get all of her nutrients from her food because she couldn't stomach typical supplements. And, you know, that was overwhelming for her as a mom of a little, and then getting pregnant and, you know, like it was a huge game changer for her when she was able to switch or to be able to actually take a multivitamin and, you know, to get the nutrients that she needed. And she still eats healthier than most people, but just she doesn't feel like she has to get all the nutrients from her food. So it reduced her stress. It led to a third pregnancy now. And just night and day. It's amazing. So I can't stress it enough to find a good quality supplement. You know what I use? I use Nutritional because they are amazing. They're the best of science, pharmaceutical grade quality and standards, paired with the best of nature, clean, safe ingredients. And they have a 65+ year track record of amazing products that work, backed by 2 massive studies done by UC Berkeley. So it's good stuff. It's not just me saying it. Like, you can go Google it. I think most people probably wouldn't say Google their company, but I do because you won't find anything bad out there. Okay, so that's micronutrients. So macronutrients are the foods that we eat that we get energy from, right? So there are 3 macronutrients. There's protein, carbohydrates, and fat. All 3 are essential for every single day. You've already heard me talk about prioritizing plenty of protein because, you know, I just learned today. So our body is like 65% water and like, well, whatever the rest of that percentage would be, what, like 35? Is that 35%? I should do some math here. It doesn't matter. The rest of that to add up to 100% is like protein, right? Like it's really important for us to be getting enough protein, plenty of protein. The standard daily recommendation of protein of 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight is way too low. Okay. If you're wanting to maintain and build lean muscle, it's recommended that you're getting at least 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. But getting more than that is not going to hurt you. There are so many myths out there about kidney issues and high protein diets. And if you have healthy kidneys, you are not going to have any problems with more protein. Okay. You're just not, but you need to make sure that you are pairing it with high fiber because protein is harder to digest and you want to make sure that everything is moving along. You want to make sure that you have good gut bacteria, all of the things to keep the digestion moving so that your body can use what it needs and get rid of what it doesn't. So macronutrients, we need all 3. Prioritizing protein is going to help you to feel full longer. It's going to give your body the building blocks that it needs. Animal protein is best. It's harder to find complete plant protein with all 9 essential amino acids. Soy is probably one of the best options. A lot of times you compare a complex carb like a bean or a legume with a plant protein so that you're getting all 9 essential amino acids. So that's very, very important. I love to do a protein shake and also a post-workout protein recovery shake because it just helps me to get more protein in my diet in an easy way that's sustainable and makes me feel good. Because as a busy mom, I need something that's fast and convenient, but also extremely good for me. And so that's a tip I always recommend. Now, quality on protein, again, matters when it comes to protein powders. There have been studies done on just the contamination in protein powders, things being in the products that are not on the labels, lead in the products. Just because it's naturally occurring in the soil does not mean that it should be in your shakes. Okay, my friends, just remember that. So it starts with companies testing from raw ingredients all the way through to finished products. And it also comes down to the digestibility. If you've ever had a protein shake where it just doesn't sit right in your tummy, that's because it has issues with digestibility, and there are scores for this. It's very fascinating, actually, all the different things that go into scoring a protein powder and protein in general. But it is really fascinating. If you have a protein shake, your tummy should not hurt afterwards. That is for sure. It also goes into, so like soy, everyone is crazy about avoiding soy based on some studies on mice and rats. Well, we're not mice and rats, and we're also not being fed massive amounts of soy like they did in these studies. We're not going to have those issues. Actually, soy protein is fascinating when it's processed correctly. A cold water processing is much preferred over heat or a chemical processing, because both of those strip the good things and leave some of those nasty, what are they called? I don't know what they're called. My friend would know, who knows all the things. It doesn't matter. See, I'm not an expert here, but I'm always learning. But it leaves some of the nasty things that we don't want in there. And so you always want to go with a cold water process when it comes to soy. Don't believe the myths. Look at the actual science and research of countries that are consuming soy and they're having lower risks of breast cancer and all the things. It's really good. But actually, soy contains what's called phytoestrogens, and these can help with balancing your hormones, which I know people tell you, like, if you have had breast cancer or you're more prone to it, like avoid soy, all the things, but it actually can be really beneficial because phytoestrogens will bind into estrogen receptors and actually block your body from having the animal-based estrogens, the xenoestrogens, which can actually have harmful effects on our body and get our hormones out of balance. And so it's just really fascinating in that sense. Science is really cool. And anyway, so I personally use soy. Our whole family does. And it's been great for us. And it's going to be great for me continuing as I age and going through hormonal changes. So when it comes to nutrition, we need all of these macronutrients, especially protein. When it comes to carbohydrates, obviously, you know what? Limit the processed stuff. Make sure that there's fiber in it. I love having fruit and veggies as my primary sources of carbohydrates because they make me feel my best. It might be different for you. I think one of the best things to recommend when it comes to carbohydrates is making sure you're pairing it with protein, because it's going to help to keep your blood sugar levels stable and not spiked. Also, just knowing how your body reacts to carbohydrates. I told you I recently did a cleanse, and this time I was able to tune into my body and find out, once I reintroduced it, that I have an issue with gluten. And so I have cut gluten out of my diet, and, I still have it occasionally because I don't have an allergy to it. I definitely have an intolerance and I don't feel well after I have it. One of the biggest indicators is how tired are you after you eat a simple carb? How do your guts feel after you have gluten? Those kinds of things. Think about that. But that's completely different for every single person, right? And fats, we need fats. Our hormones move through our bodies. Fat. We need fat. I cannot state this enough. And I'm not talking about like heavily processed, fried, fatty crap. I'm talking about like real fats from, organic, grass-fed, free range, wild caught, sustainable, good products from animals, from seafood, eggs. There are so many studies showing that eggs that are organic free range are so much healthier. Like you can just go to the store, buy a thing of conventional eggs and buy a thing of organic free range eggs, crack each open and look at the egg yolks. And I guarantee that conventional egg yolk is going to be kind of a pale, yucky yellow. That organic free range is going to be a bright, rich, deep orange yellow. Even better if you can find a local farmer who has chickens and raises them this way. Oh my gosh, it's amazing the color that you get in those. Just so much better. Okay, so macro and micronutrients, really important. That's our foundation of nutrition. So nutritional pillar of health, okay? Very, very important what we're putting into our body. The fuel that we're choosing to use is going to affect the output of energy and just basic function in our life, okay? The last one is environmental. And honestly, this is more so about just how we're navigating the world around us and the world that we live in, right? So our ability to manage stress, that is so important. I've already mentioned cortisol levels. You know, anytime cortisol levels are elevated, that wreaks havoc on our body. It also causes us to get more fat in our belly area over time, which also is impacted by changing hormone levels. And so these are things we want to be very aware of, is managing our stress levels well. I personally love taking a natural product called Stress Relief Complex. And what it does is it blunts the release of cortisol in my body, but it does it in a non-drowsy, non-medication, natural way. And that's been really helpful for me in managing stress because I have 5 kids. So I can't necessarily eliminate the stress in my life. You know, but not subjecting myself to extra stressful situations that I know are not going to be helpful for me. You know, making sure that the people that I'm surrounding myself to the best of my ability and my control, that I am limiting time with people who drain me and choosing to be around people that, you know, that we grow together and we lift each other up and those kinds of things. And then also just being aware of what we're consuming, like for entertainment, media, different things like that. Like the greatest test of this is go look at your social media feed. Does it give you anxiety to look at it? Whether it's anxiety induced from a feeling of not being as good as all these people and not comparing, or it's induced from just a lot of negativity in your feed, or you know what it is you're subjecting yourself to. And if any of this is impacting you, then maybe it's time to unfollow lots of people, right? And like change what it is that you're seeing. And, you know, I have over the years cultivated my social media feed that it is very positive. It is very encouraging. It's filled with people who are, you know, focusing on who they're becoming, who are growing. And, you know, like I've seen some other feeds that are just all about divisions and negativity, and like, honestly, don't watch the news. Don't do it. I haven't watched the news in I don't know how long. I hate it when it's on in public places because I am drawn to watch it and I get mad in 0.5 seconds. And so like, I just can't subject myself to that. So just having an understanding of the stressors in your life and how you're managing them can just be really, really helpful. Learning to breathe, going outside, getting some fresh air, being in the sunshine, all these kinds of things, you know, finding the things that you do enjoy that fill your cup, right? That fuel your soul, and making sure that those are foundational to start your day intentionally, not just as a byproduct, right? So it's really, really important that we learn to navigate our environments and we learn to craft them into something that helps us to grow and not stresses us out. You know, it's a practice, right? It starts with an awareness and intentional action. And that all starts in our brain, just like we talked about in that first pillar of health mindset. Okay, so I wanted to give you 5 tips here so that you could implement these things and really start to change the who you're becoming and the behavior modification on the back end, right? So the first one is to start with who, not how. Again, who is it that you want to become? And looking at that person, what are the things that they would do? But more importantly, what are the things that they tell themselves? What are the stories that they're telling themselves? We can't control the negative thoughts coming into our brains, but we can control what we do with them and how we respond, think, act, speak, all those things. So start with who, not how. The second one is to get a full picture. I think so often we are the worst, or I guess you could say best, at lying to ourselves to make ourselves feel better. Like, if I spend money, I will round down in the amount. And if I'm talking about how much money I saved, I will round up. Neither are really helpful. It's actually more helpful to get a specific and clear and accurate account of any given situation. And so, stepping back and taking a full look at our life, asking someone we love and trust who has growth in our best interest in mind to come alongside us and take a look. This is where coaches are so helpful to be able to do that, because they can kind of hover over the situation and get a not related, not in the situation look, and help you to see some maybe blind spots in those kinds of things. So get a full picture of where you actually are, because you can't change what you don't know. And if you don't have that full picture, how are you going to know the most important places to start focusing your energy on to change, right? Okay, so the third one, small steps. So this is where the behavior does come in. Okay, so if you are wanting to become someone who is confident in their own skin, who prioritizes health, who stands on a solid foundation of these pillars that I've talked about today, who is not afraid to take risks when they're following the calling and walking that out in their lives, what are the things that a person like that would be doing? I guarantee they're not just showing up and reacting to their life every day and letting things just go by default, because just like I said last week, our default setting is not helpful. It does not get us the results that we want in our life. So we need to be clear about, okay, so I guarantee that a person like that is probably taking time to plan the time that they do have. Right? We all have 24 hours in a day, but some people use that really wisely and most people don't. And so it's not that we need more time in the day. It's just that we need to get better at using the time that we do have. And that comes down to knowing what our priorities are, because we've taken the time to get a full picture of our life. We know the areas we want to work in and improve. And we've started with the who that we're becoming and not just starting with the how. Okay, so when we're looking at these steps of behavior, thinking if it's someone who is going to use their time well, I guarantee they're probably planning their time in advance. Now, are they going to do it in the morning when they wake up for their day when it's already started? They're probably going to do it the night before, if not a week before, maybe a month before, right? Now, one caveat on planning for the future. Plan well, but hold those plans loosely, because life is life and we can't control everything. And if we get too much in that, everything has to be like scheduled and planned, and we don't leave room for margin, and then we miss a lot of the beautiful moments of life. So it's just leaning into who is that person that we're becoming and what are the things that they would do, and then spending time thinking through that and then starting small. So that brings us to the fourth one, is sustainability. If it's not something that we can do consistently over time, day after day, no matter how we feel, it's not going to work in our life. That's why I hate diets and I hate quick fixes, because they might get you some results quickly, but it's not sustainable. So as soon as you go back to your norm, you're going to be right back where you were, and you're going to continue to stay stuck in this cycle of starting and restarting and starting over and just never getting ahead, because you can't be consistent with it. So sustainability is super important. That's why small steps that you can do every day are really, really important, and they're going to lead to big changes over time. And then the last one is not focusing on feelings, not focusing on how we feel, because you're going to have days where you do not feel like working out. And your brain is going to tell you, I don't feel like working out today. And you are going to lean into the who that you're becoming. And you're going to be able to say, you know what? I know I don't feel like working out today, but I know that when I work out, based on the evidence of me working out in different times, I feel great after I work out every single time. So I'm going to work out regardless of how I feel today, because it's who I'm becoming. It's not just something that I do. It's not something I have to do. When we're talking about eating, right? Like my default is to eat like a teenage kid, and it doesn't make me feel well. But the who that I'm becoming doesn't eat that way. The who that I'm becoming eats to fuel my body well so that I can show up the best that I can in my life as God is calling me to do. And so on the days where I feel like just binging on all the crap food, I'm not saying that we can't do those things. Like we can just own it and move on. We don't get stuck in those things. But looking at that long term and not basing it on feelings, because if we base our decisions on how we feel in the moment, we're never going to get ahead in our life. And we're never going to feel the best that we possibly could. We're never going to be able to establish these 4 pillars of health as a solid foundation in our life that we get to continue to build on over time, so that we do get to live younger, longer. Like who wants to get old quickly and feel old? Like I know so many 30-plus-year-olds that feel like crap, like they struggle to get out of bed in the morning, and we do not have to feel that way. I'm 36 and I don't feel that way. And it's because I've established these 4 pillars of health as my foundation, and I've been able to continue to build on them over the years because it's sustainable, and because I'm focusing on who I'm becoming and not just on the results that I'm seeing today. Because a lot of times those results do not come for a very long time until we've been consistent for an amount of time, right? So next week, we're going to be talking about planning to win, specifically eating well on purpose, because again, our default is not to make the best decisions. Our default is to do what's easiest, and easiest is not usually what's best. I hope you enjoyed this today. I would love to hear your comments on if there's a certain area that you struggle with, or if there's just a certain area in your health, or there's a topic that you would like me to address. Leave your question. I would love to answer those. I would love to do an episode on answering your questions and diving deep into those. All right. Enjoy this, my friends, and have a great day.